What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Babbles Nonsense podcast. I wanted to talk about confidence, vulnerability, dating, relationships, all sorts of things today. Babbling on, as I always do on today's episode. So if you want to hear my thoughts surrounding these things, then stick around. This episode is definitely for you. All right, guys, welcome back to the podcast. I just want to go ahead and just start off by saying, I know the podcast lately has been a little bit more daunting. It has been more serious conversation, life talks, but that's just kind of where I'm at in my life right now. So yes, interviews will come back. Yes, the lighthearted, funny vibes will come back as well. But I'm just going through a period in my life where this is kind of what I want it to be. So I can't apologize for that. But I hope you enjoy it just the same. So talking about vulnerability and confidence is kind of what I want to talk about today. And I read a book recently by Matthew Hussey called Love Life. And I've mentioned it on previous podcasts. And I was reading that because I kind of went through a little heartbreak of my own recently. And I haven't really shared that or talked about it. But I guess we're talking about it today. So I picked that book up just to navigate that heartbreak. But Matthew Hussey gave a better definition of vulnerability, and I just want to share what he said vulnerability is to him. He said that vulnerability, which, y'all, I'm butchering this because I am tongue-tied as shit, so just bear with me. So he says that vulnerability is sharing the parts of you that you are insecure about and you're still learning and healing from. And when he said that, I was just like, oh, I love that so much more than the Webster Dictionary version of what vulnerability is, because it really is true. It takes a lot of courage and a lot of guts to be vulnerable, especially on a platform, but more so just in everyday life. It takes a lot of courage just to even be vulnerable enough to open up to the people that are closest to you. And sometimes it even takes courage to be vulnerable with yourself, because sometimes I think even if people are close to you, we fear that judgment. We fear what people will think, or that they will give their uninvited opinions to something we just poured our heart and soul into, or about, if you will. But that's just the world we kind of live in today. You know, everyone's opinionated and everyone wants to share how they feel about any and all things. Our opinions are also forever changing, right? I could record this podcast today and say all the stuff that I'm going to say in it, and then wake up tomorrow and just be like, you know what? I changed my mind. I feel none of that anymore. And so it's kind of hard when I record a podcast, because I want it to be perfect and I want it to come across inspirational or eye-opening, or someone to be like, yes, I just love this. That just made me think in a whole different manner. And I would ultimately that is the goal, right? I still want that. But sometimes it's not going to be that way. Sometimes it's just going to be me babbling on a mic because I truly enjoy podcasting. But today, with talking about confidence and vulnerability and getting into the dating portion of it, I was really inspired to sit down and record this because of a girl I follow on Instagram. She is someone I actually know in real life. I've known her for a few years. And when I say know her, I don't know her. I just know of her. I've talked to her a few times in person and kind of just watch her on her stories. So more social media friends, I would say, than in real life person friends. But recently she's been posting on her stories, and she has been a bit more vulnerable herself, and it was very relatable. And I was just I really enjoy the fact when people do that, and I need to do it more. And I feel like we all could do it a little bit more, just because it kind of inspires others to share their stories, and it kind of goes into this trickle effect. And it kind of just makes you realize that you truly aren't alone in this world with the feelings that you have. Other people are experiencing them too. We just don't talk about it because that's not the quote unquote pretty parts of ourselves. That's not the happiest parts in our lives. It's not the highlight reel that you want everyone to think you live in, that you post on social media. Because who wants to just sit down and, bitch and cry and have that bitch fest all the time? Nobody wants to do that. It's not fun. It's not fun to hear it. It's not fun to do it or live in it. But people want to be happy and they want to keep it moving, But I do think it's okay at times to slow it down and truly be open and vulnerable and let yourself be relatable to the world. I'm not saying that you have to jump on a platform, whether that be your social media, a podcast, whatever it is that you feel is your platform in life, just to be vulnerable. I'm just saying, try to do it with your friends, your closest friends, your significant other, maybe even to yourself, so that you can open up and just let people understand what makes you you. Let people get to know the real you, your true personality, whether that be you talk about your childhood trauma, your childhood triggers. It could be anything. Just get out there and start communicating and try to be vulnerable while you do it. But I also think we as humans, we need to be a little bit more willing to listen to understand instead of listening just to hear people. Because I have noticed that when men do try to be a little bit more vulnerable, maybe women aren't ready to hear it, or maybe it wasn't the way they wanted to hear it. So then they criticize that vulnerable parts of them. And then that makes men a little less apprehensive to be vulnerable. That's just my opinion anyways. But back to the story I was talking about, while I was inspired to do this podcast, this girl that I know of and watch her stories and stuff like that, to me, she's a very beautiful girl, like super beautiful, looks wise, she's gorgeous. I feel like she could be a model, but not just look wise. I feel like she's just super kind and she has a super sweet soul and she's funny. So isn't that the total package? Isn't that what people want? And she got on her stories and she was talking about how she was lacking confidence in one of them because she had gone through a pretty traumatic breakup recently. And I'm just paraphrasing, this is not verbatim what she said, but she was just talking saying how women like to cut their hair when they go through a breakup or something, new me kind of vibes. And she was like, well, what should I do with myself? Should I just go get my face full of filler and Botox and make myself feel better about myself? And I was just when I was watching the story, and I actually DM'd her because I was just wow, I would have never thought that someone who looked like her would struggle with confidence, because I would kill to look like her, But isn't that how it is? We always want what we don't have, or beauty is in the eye of the beholder, all these sayings that we could say. But I know, going through breakups and stuff, we can question ourselves as women. I feel like women mostly. I can't speak from a man's experience. I know I have a lot of women that listen to this podcast, so shout out to the men that do stick around and listen to me, Babylon. But it was just very eye-opening experience for me, because I would have never thought that she would have, experienced that. But I appreciate how brave and how vulnerable she was to share that. And it made me be like, you know what? I need to talk about that on my platform, because maybe it can help somebody else. Just like I was very inspired by her story, maybe I can inspire someone else and we can have a little trickle effect from this. So I'll just start by saying, I have not always been the most confident person, which I know I get looked at a lot for that. They're like, what do you mean you come across as confident, on your social media, or the fact that you have a podcast, because that takes a lot of confidence to do. But I feel like for me, there's two different sides of me. I have my professional life and I have my personal life. And for me, in my professional life, I've always been super confident because I almost feel like I'm wearing a mask, I'm a whole different person when I'm at work. And I know I mentioned previously, if y'all have listened to other podcast episodes, that I recently got back into therapy. I had been in therapy for over a year and had stopped going and did the life coaching for a little bit. And then I went back. And I was telling my therapist that about the work, feeling more confident in my work life. And she was like, well, that makes a lot of sense, because who you are at work, you get to create that persona. And usually when you start your professional career, it's not until your 20s, which I know I had jobs before my 20s, but my professional career didn't start until my 20s. So she was like, it's almost like that's where you started, was in your 20s versus in your personal life. You have all this baggage you're carrying around, your childhood trauma, the subconscious parts of your mind that you have to navigate. So she was kind of explaining it to me, and I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. But with that being said, I have been someone who has struggled with my confidence a lot. And it's kind of funny that we're talking about this because it's coming off an episode where I just had someone on, like Brittany, who does fillers and Botox. And that's something that is like an outward source for confidence, which we'll get into in just a little bit. But I am a type of person that does believe that two things can coexist at the same time. I feel like you can still seek outward confidence as long as you're working on your inner confidence. And we're going to kind of dive into the two here in just a minute. But I do want to kind of give the definition, like the true definition from the dictionary of what confidence is before we kind of dive into the book a little bit and how Matthew Hussey explains confidence. But confidence is the feeling or belief that one can rely on someone or something. It's a firm trust, the state of feeling certain about the truth of something, a feeling of self-assurance arising from one's appreciation of one's own abilities or qualities. So even in the actual definition of confidence, it is saying that confidence should come from within. So in this book that I read by Matthew Hussey, he talks about core confidence. And core confidence is that confidence that comes truly from within, like owning your personality or what you know you're good at, the things that you know you love about yourself. And there's nothing in this world that anyone can do or say to tear it down. He explains it in a way of like, the relationship that you're going to have the longest in this world is with yourself. So you might as well get acquainted with yourself and start to love yourself because you ain't going nowhere. Like you ain't going nowhere. Like friends can come and go, family can come and go, spouses, relationships can come and go, but you are stuck with you. So when he said it like that, I was just like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. So you have your core confidence, which is what we just talked about. And then you have like outside sources that can quote unquote boost your confidence. Some people do try to find all of their confidence from outside sources. And I think in my younger years, that's what I was trying to do. So like some outside sources of confidence could be like dating someone, being in a relationship with someone, how you look, filler, Botox, weight loss, like hair extensions, clothing, houses, cars, things like that. Like things that you feel make you who you are when those things really don't, like almost like materialistic things. Those are outside source confidence. And let me just say this, like I always thought that someone could only have confidence if they were attractive, which like looking back, like that's what I thought growing up. Like you had to be attractive to have confidence. Like I didn't realize like confidence came from within. Unsure why, but I didn't. And of course I knew that before this book, but I'm just like trying to explain like why I keep relating looks and stuff to confidence. And it's just because that's part of what I thought growing up, which I mean, we all know that there are very attractive people in this world that have no confidence, or they seek or they get their confidence from outside sources and stuff like that. And it's a very juvenile thought process, but that's what I thought. I just thought if you were very attractive, you had all the confidence in the world. But anyways, going back to what we were discussing, the way Matthew Hussey explained it was that the outward sources that we like are looking for to give us confidence versus like either boost it or like, what's the word? Kind of compliment your confidence. It's forever fleeting. Like you could lose that tomorrow. And if you don't have the core confidence within yourself to know who you are at your core, then you will quickly lose your confidence again once those outward sources are gone. Like, for example, if you lose your job and you have to move back in with your parents, heaven forbid, hopefully that never happens to anyone. But if it does, and you have no extra like expendable income to purchase like the Botox, the hair extensions, nails, gym memberships, whatever it is that you purchase, like the nice cars, the nice houses, then you may then lose all your confidence if you're only looking towards the outward sources to give you confidence and you haven't worked on the inner stuff. But let's just take it to the dating example. Like if you're dating someone, you're in a relationship with someone, or you're married, you could go through a divorce, a breakup, or heaven forbid something tragic happens and like they pass away or something like that, not to be morbid, but then you start questioning everything about yourself. Like, and I think mostly for women, I think women are more guilty of this. I can't speak from a man's perspective because clearly I'm not a man. And I can only speak from the female's perspective because it's what I've been through personally. But I just feel like women do question themselves, like after a breakup or something ends more. I think we tend to be like, am I not pretty enough? Was I not good enough? Am I not thin enough? Like, should I dye my hair? Should I look a certain way? And I think sometimes that comes more like if there's a lot of cheating or maybe infidelity, but it doesn't have to be cheating or infidelity for women to start questioning themselves. And not all women do. I'm not speaking on all women's behalf. I'm just saying like those questions do start popping in your head. But going back to the story about the girl on Instagram talking about her recent breakup, I could relate to that because I recently also went through my own personal heartbreak. I was dating this guy that I really did care for, and we had become like really good friends through dating and things like that. And we recently ended things, nothing bad, just two people who ultimately wanted different things at the end of it all. But we ended things very amicably, and I still very much care and respect this person as a friend, but knew that I had to navigate through the heartbreak. And where I'm going with this is that I noticed that like the end of this heartbreak was different with my confidence. Like it didn't waver this time, which in past experiences where I had dated other people, like those questions that I mentioned earlier, like, am I good enough? Am I not pretty enough? Things like that had gone through my head in the past with other people I dated, but didn't this time. And so when I thought about this idea for the podcast, I had to like sit down and like truly do some introspection and be like, why is that? Like, I didn't even realize that I had developed more confidence. And if I had to think back on it, I would say that when we first started dating, before we ended things, like probably 2.5 years ago, I had pretty low self-esteem, self-confidence, because again, like growing up, I had looked towards outside sources for confidence. Like I thought all these things. Anyways, that's a whole nother day for a whole nother podcast. That's some more childhood trauma that I don't need to drag y'all through. But I can remember when he first asked me out on a date for the first time, me telling a friend like, nah, not going. He's too attractive. Like, who says that? Like, isn't that the goal? Like, don't we want people that we are attracted to ask us out? But I really did think that he was too attractive for me. Like, I was like, we're not compatible. Like I'm not pretty enough to go on a date for him. Like I'm sure he can get way prettier women. And those are the thoughts that truly went through my head. Like I'm just being super honest. But the more dates that we went on and the more I could just be myself around him and just show my personality, I started to really open up and be who I just was. And I stopped worrying or caring about what I looked like. Like for 9 out of 10 times, like I can guarantee you I was in some sweatpants, no makeup on, and just like felt fine. Like I didn't feel insecure about it like I probably would have in the past. So I will definitely give him some credit there, because I think that for the fact that like he never commented badly on my looks, like if I was in sweatpants or, no makeup, he wasn't like, could you dress up maybe a little bit for me? Like he never made comments like that. He just didn't. I mean, of course he complimented me when we would go out on dates and stuff, and I would dress up. So it wasn't that I never got any compliments. It's just that he never commented negatively. And I think that is a good thing. And I think more people in this world could learn from that. Like, I think that just in general, we should stop commenting negatively on people's looks, because some things are genetic. Some things people can't help. Like, hell, even some of the Kardashians and Jenners, like they wouldn't be as beautiful as they are if they didn't have the money they have. And I'm sorry I said it. Yes, I did. Allegedly. But what it seemed like is it didn't matter what I looked like while we were dating and stuff like that. So I do think that's some of it, because I'd never experienced that before, where someone didn't comment negatively on like my body or my looks, because that had happened a lot in my younger years. And I'm not saying that was all of what built my core confidence. Like I definitely did a lot of work in the past couple of years. Like I've gone back to therapy. I've done life coaching, energy healing. I've read a lot of books, listened to a lot of podcasts, and like just really had to dive in and just figure the shit out. But I'm definitely not perfect. Like I still struggle with it. Like I still sometimes fall back on it and like pick myself apart just like anyone. And it's going to be a daily thing that I have to work on, and I truly want to work on it. But anyways, I would like for example, I was sitting on the couch the other night when I had just gotten back from Nashville, because if you listened to the podcast last week or know a little bit about my journey, I had under eye filler about 10 years ago that kind of went badly, and I've done everything to fix it, so much so to go as far as plastic surgery a couple years ago. And it fixed the swelling under my eyes, but then like in the past couple of months it returned. So I went to Nashville to get the filler dissolved because for whatever reason this filler is just not dissolving. And so got back, was sitting on my couch, and I was just like, when is this going to be enough? Like, when am I just going to accept that this may be a permanent thing? Like, when am I going to be satisfied? And when am I going to stop chasing, trying to fix this? Like, how far am I going to take this? When is enough going to be enough? When am I just going to accept that this is what it is? I have swelling under my left eye. It's going to be there. I need to be confident with it. I need to just say this is a part of my face now, and it is what it is, you know? Like, and it just got me thinking, and I was just like, we're all aging. Like, we can't slow down time. We can't stop time. We cannot get time back. We are all at some point going to age. We're going to be wrinkly. Things are going to happen. And at what point do we just accept it? Like, at what point do we say, my looks don't matter and it matters who I am? And again, this is who I would love to be every day, all day, but that's just not true. I'll just be honest. And I think women mostly, I'm talking mostly to women because mostly women listen to this podcast, like I said earlier, but I'm sure men struggle with this too. But I think it's just a little bit more like socially acceptable for men to not worry so much about their looks, or maybe there's just more societal pressure put on women to, quote unquote, age gracefully. Don't get wrinkles, but also don't get Botox and filler, because who does that? Like, you should, look younger than you are. Where for men, I feel like it's more acceptable for them to look their age. Like, it's very attractive for a man to have salt and pepper hair. It's also very attractive for a man to have a dad bod. It's just attractive in general for men to age, period. So I do think that there is that societal pressure that we have. And I think that with the societal pressure it puts on women to not age kind of stems from like Hollywood and movies and things like that. But it's still pressure, right? Like, it's still there. So that's where I'm like, where do we draw the line? And I'm not saying like don't get filler and don't get Botox. I'm not saying that at all. Like, clearly I get it. Like, I'm not telling anyone to not do it. I'm just saying, like, sometimes we can take things a little too far, and we have to at some point accept who we are for who we are. And if people can't accept us for who we are, then should they really be in our lives? Like, probably not, And I know that's easier said than done. And I say it to my friends all the time. Like, what's the saying? Like, the pot calls the kettle black or something like that. Like, hello, I'm the pots. I'm the problem. I know I tell people like, oh, don't worry about it. It looks great. Like, but then I'm the one over here worrying about it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can sit here and I can even, have epiphanies all day long, but really it's each individual's journey, and you just kind of have to do the journey that you're on, right? Like, I'll give another example. Like, I was sitting on the couch the other day again, which now that I'm saying this out loud, it's like, damn, I sit on the couch a lot, but I do. It is what it is. I was like, I'll be 37 this year. I'm aging. I'm getting older. It's inevitable. It's happening. Do I feel 37? No, and I often wonder, like, do our parents feel this way? Like, does my mom in her 60s, like, feel like, I don't feel like I'm 60? Cause like, I don't feel like I'm 37. I still feel like I'm super young, but it's like, you see your body aging, but your mind feels younger. It's so weird. But I say all that to say, like, when's enough enough? When is enough enough? Like, because I think as women, we chase this unattainable beauty. I think we keep chasing, like, once I get this, I'll feel better about myself. Like, once I get the lip filler, I'll feel better about myself. Once I get the Botox, I'll feel better about myself. Once I lose this weight, I'll feel better about myself. And we keep chasing the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And it's like, and you achieve the goal that you wanted, but you're still chasing that next thing, and it's never enough. You're never happy. When does that end? And like, I'll be honest, I don't know the answer to that. Like, I truly don't. Like, it's kind of a rhetorical question. I'm not asking anyone to answer it by any means. But anyways, if anything that you can get out of this podcast, I really just want y'all to try to be a little bit more vulnerable, whether that be with yourself, like maybe have a dialogue with yourself, maybe journal, maybe ask yourself some deep questions on why you do some of the things that you do, maybe sit down and try to figure that out while you're feeling the way you're feeling versus just numbing your emotions with things like alcohol and drugs, or numbing it with TV and social media, or working too much, or trying to do anything and everything that you can to not feel something or to not think on something. And I get it, it's painful, but that's something else Matthew Hussey had said in his book was like pain points in our life, like tragedy, death, breakups, like those are all pretty emotionally painful things. And that's when we grow the most as humans. Like we have to go through those downs to have the highs, like the lows and the highs. Like you have to go through a low point to have a high point, to like learn and come out on the other side of it a better person, because you have to go through it. You have to like really sit with those emotions, and you have to just feel, and you have to try to be like, where could I have done better? Where can I do better in the future? Like I shouldn't make this mistake again, and just things like that. And if it is too painful for you and you don't want to do that alone, then definitely like reach out to a professional, whether that be a therapist or a life coach, or maybe just grab one of your closest friends that you trust and say, look, like, can I vent to you right now? Like I'm going through some things. Like, can I vent to you? Can you not interject? Can you just listen to me? Like listen to understand, not listen to hear, and just understand what I'm saying, and maybe don't chime in, and maybe don't give advice. And look, I'm the world's worst at that. I need to do better with my friends. I need to like preface conversations saying like, do you want to vent right now? Do you want my advice right now? And I think a lot of my issues with conversations would also go away, but that's neither here nor there. But if we could like all, I think, just be a little bit more vulnerable with ourselves, with our spouses, with our closest friends, and then maybe try to bring that out into the world, kind of like the girl from the Instagram story. Like it kind of sparked this conversation. I think that would just help bring your confidence up in general, because I think if we shared parts of ourselves that maybe we're, like struggling with, like Matthew Hussey said, like if things that you're going through, things that you're struggling with, if we share that, then maybe that can fix a little bit of our core confidence and bring it up without those outside sources. I think we have to try to find things inwardly that develop our confidence versus the outward sources. So like, it doesn't matter what kind of car you drive. It doesn't matter what house you have. It doesn't matter, like what you look like. Ultimately, the only thing that matters is how you feel about yourself as a person on the inside. And can you lay on your pillow at night and go to sleep comfortably knowing that you did the best you could throughout the day? And like, I think that's all that matters. Like, I don't always have the best days. I don't always live this way. Like I've mentioned multiple times, like I sometimes still struggle with that confidence issue where I'm seeking outside sources, and I have to kind of stop myself and just realize it. And and usually I'll talk to a friend, like, listen, y'all know I can talk. That's why I have a podcast. Like I'll talk to my friend about it. I'll try to have these deep conversations and just go from there. But anyways, like I digress. I'm kind of beating a dead horse at this point, but I do think I need to get a man on here to talk about confidence coming from like a man's perspective, just to hear, just because I have a lot of male friends and we do have a lot of deep conversations and kind of talk about stuff like this. But sometimes I think my male friends are just different than others. Maybe they're not. Maybe everyone's guy friends are like this. But my guy friends like are deep thinkers, and they have good conversations, and they love to talk, and they love to express themselves, and they don't really like run from conversation, which for me is kind of a blessing and a curse, because I love that kind of conversation. So it kind of raises my standards for men, but it also makes it harder when I'm dating someone, because I'm like, if someone's just like on that superficial, like, what's up, how's it going, I'm just like, nah, I'm good, like, let's move on. I don't know, maybe it's because my male friends are like older and they're just like old souls. I don't know what I'm saying at this point. So I'm going to end it right here. I'm also going to do a podcast on my under eye filler situation fiasco once like we have the final verdict. I have a post-procedure appointment this week. So once we know kind of like where we are with the dissolving and if I'm going to have another procedure on my eye, I'll sit down and do a whole podcast podcast on that, so do not worry about that. But anyways, guys, feel free to reach out to me and let me know if you enjoyed this episode or this type of content. I definitely love hearing from you guys. I know I have great conversations in the DMs about the episodes. I'll end it. So as always, guys, until next time, bye.